happens to be a subconscious reaction as opposed to a rational one.
Mm-hmm. And indeed, there have been many examples of, and some comedies. I don't know if you saw the film Soul Man, where someone didn't get into university in America and discovered that for positive discrimination of non-white people, there was a certain number of scholarships allowed. So he took too many tanning pills.
It was a black scholarship. It was
a black scholarship, and he got in. And but then he experienced the racial prejudice whilst he was a black student, including people assuming that he'd be fantastic at sport. Which
in basketball it was. Actually, I do remember. God, I saw that film. I don't know if it's been redone, but I saw that film probably about 30 years ago.
And funny enough, it was so funny because it rung so true. And indeed, one of my old colleagues who was a mental health nurse. He had long hair and a beard and dressed very shabbily, but he was exceptionally good at his job. And one day he turned up and he was beautifully coiffed and he got rid of his beard and everything. And he said to me, I never get stopped anymore. I drive an XR3i. I used to get stopped practically every single day. Now I don't.
When I was at actually, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was at university, there were these two black guys, and they dressed in their very trendy outfits, and one of them drove the Ferrari, and his father owned a string of estate agents as of what he became part of the business. So, he liked his bling, he liked his clothes, his designer labels, and he drove a Ferrari. Now, the thing is, you see it like a 28-year-old, or I think that's what he was at the time, because we were doing evening classes. A black guy in that, the first assumption is a drug dealer. So the thing is, what happened was every time he saw a new policeman around that he never met before, he used to stop the car, introduce himself, and tell him who he was.
Avoid getting into trouble.
which is ironic. Now the thing is, he actually obviously did it and did it from a very fun element, whereas some people would actually become quite aggressive about it. And I think if you're going to if you know you're going to be dealing with situations like that, it's like this guy, and this is probably why he was so successful. Rather than actually get angry about it, he preempted it, actually made the funny action of it by going and introducing himself. And you know what? I think his life was probably a lot better than actually coming from that real negative place that he was. Anyway, but that doesn't excuse...
The danger of the pressure of political correctness, you see, is that people's behaviour cannot be relied on. You need proper leadership. Remember I was telling you the story of a case I was doing when one of my patients went to court, and he had two barristers looking after him and a solicitor. And as I said to you, we all went to dinner because we had to go out into the country for the court case, and one of the barristers ordered an extremely expensive bottle of wine. And I said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Well, we have to ply our other witness and make sure he complies with what we want." I went and told the client this, and he said, "Thank you, I'll attend to that." Can you imagine this? These guys just living on this guy's budget. Then I saw the two barristers wearing Patek Philippe watches, and I commented, "That's very smart." He said, "I can get you lots. Would you like some?" So the next day he turns up, takes me to an interview room, opens his cloak, and it's lined with very blingy watches.
It's very much a Del Boy, isn't it?
And I said, "No, thank you." And it turned
really? Did you say no, thank you?
I didn't like any of them. And then 2 years later...
would you bought one if it was?
I don't actually. But
they're off the back of a lorry, sorry.
I'd have to see it first.
Okay.
2 years later, I found out that a Saudi prince was after him for £2 million. I then found out that the old barrister had been caught for overcharging and had taken early retirement in lieu of getting into trouble. And the solicitor himself had his offices raided for money laundering. So there you go. So solicitor, two barristers, no trust at all. And the point I'm making is that people cannot be relied upon to police themselves, to regulate their own behaviour. They need to be effectively led, and it can't be done by public opinion. It can't be done by political correctness. That will end up in the worst kind of results, as we're seeing around us.
Yeah, but here's the problem with things like that, particularly in the legal field. The higher up you get in terms of who the decision makers are, will pretty much know each other. So they will make decisions that are going to be beneficial to them and not necessarily for the public. So while I'm not a big revolutionist, I do believe that sometimes people need to fight back. So, for example, if you look somewhere like Venezuela, you've got this Maduro character who's president. He's changed the whole legal system so no one can then challenge him. He's banned the opposition party, and now people are starving. And funny enough, my mother was saying to me the other day that actually Venezuela is so bad that she contacted a friend of hers on WhatsApp who was over there, and she said to me, do you know what? She goes, you will not find any stray dogs or stray cats anymore because people are eating them. That's how bad things have got under this guy. So at some point, these leaders, no matter how bad they are, people will revolt because, and I said to my mum, I said, there will probably be a civil war. She goes, no, there won't be. People are too hungry, too tired, too sick. And I says, when it comes to survival, people are hardwired to then fight back. All right, they won't let it go. And this is exactly what this guy did in terms of coming back to this burglary case. People are hardwired to survive. And the thing is, as also a keeper of his wife who was disabled, because let's face it, if something happened to him, they could do anything to his wife. So in that respect, literally, you don't know. So in that respect, what he did, again, it wasn't rational, but the thing is, even if it was, it sends a message that if you carry on doing this is what's going to happen. Because let's face it, we've talked about Saudi Arabia before. If you actually thieve, you hand your hand cut off. How much theft is there over in Saudi Arabia?
Almost zero.
Almost zero, exactly. But we allow people to get away with too much over here as well.
It's permissive, and permissiveness is a sign of lack of leadership.
But the law also needs to actually have a more moral code rather than actually have Asperger's judges sitting on the bench making decisions.
There's 3,500 new laws a year.
Really?
Yeah. And that's simply because society's falling apart through lack of leadership and moral code and religious code, and therefore there's 3,500 new ways of becoming a criminal. So the law gets more ridiculous each year. Why do I say ridiculous? Because it provides more restriction to what should be everyday normal behaviour and should be common sense. And you can't really legislate for common sense. That's the problem you've got. And then, remember, the British law is based on the ancient theory of hand-to-hand combat. That's basically what it is. It's based on the Viking hand-to-hand combat. Now, the difficulty with that is that you need two people who are fairly reasonably matched to fairly settle the fight. But for instance, in the case we discussed for you, you're representing yourself. You have a partner of a law firm against you. I mean, where is the equality in that combat?
No, there isn't, and I think that's where the law failed. It's not it's not just about how good the case is. And the thing is, lawyers will look at the case and goes, can I win it? And some of them will look at it and goes, can I actually even be asked with it?
And of course, the less effective the law is, the more the criminal element will come about, and the more society will disregard the law. For instance, in Italy, the law is even worse than it is here. And what I mean by that is that once you're stuck in some kind of legal process, it takes years, decades even, to get sorted out, which is why Berlusconi is not in prison, and he's even been running for office again, even though he's found guilty. Can you believe that? And therefore, that's why there's so much corruption in Italy, because nobody respects the law. It's impossible to deal with. So I think things need to get.
But hold on. But we talked about this in a minute. The people at the top who aren't the most honourable people, who are making decisions on behalf of the public. And funny enough, I was in a mastermind meeting yesterday with my group, which we meet once a month, and we were talking about how society, or how the establishment, if you want to call it the establishment, are looking to actually make us dumber. They're dumbing us down. They're pulling us down a process where we are becoming less intelligent in some respect, because therefore makes us more compliable. Now, I haven't read the book.
Nothing wrong with that, because nothing wrong with that. The reation is that
if you actually want a hierarchy who wants to control people.
Because people need control, they need leadership, because the individuals, or the average individual, is incapable of consistent rational thought incapable, and for two reasons. One, because they're fickle, and again, we've discussed research that shows that people will instantly change their opinion. For instance, when they did a study and they showed cards with pictures or statements to people, and they said, choose what you prefer. They made their choice, and then the experimenter instantly double carded them with the opposite card. He said, okay. Then he put that forward to them. He said, why did you choose this? 99% of them gave reasons why they chose it, even though it wasn't the card they chose. Okay. The second thing is that the media, which control everything that we see and hear, cannot objectively report news on an economical level, so therefore they can't make money reporting news objectively, and they've shown huge world maps on what's going on in the world versus what the media are reporting, and they are completely mismatched. And it's been shown time and again with solid heavyweight research that the media exaggerate and they misreport things, and in fact quite blatantly lie about things in order to sell their print, which then misinforms the public, makes them cynical. So how on earth can you have any kind of voting and democracy? The point I'm making is that people need leadership. They're incapable of having a democracy. And in fact, democracy destroyed ancient Greece. So when,
no! Come on, the EU destroyed it.
Well, as well. On top of that,
no, that destroyed modern Greece.
That was the double death blow. But and of course, and in fact, Varoufakis actually did say. He said when he went to Brussels, as when he was still finance minister of Greece, and he went there hoping that there would be some kind of common sense. They said to him, "We don't care about Greece. We care about the Europe and the EU." And he knew that it was dead. And he said that the longer the EU is kept going by artificial means, the bigger the disaster at the end of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, funny enough, actually, something came to mind yesterday. Actually, yesterday I was thinking about it. I was pondering it. I don't know why, but there's this whole case about the UK and Russia and the Salisbury poisoning. And I made an association, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I'm going to put it out there. And I'm thinking that the headlines and the media who wanted us back in Europe are making headlines about the whole Russian mafia, Eastern criminal gangs controlling things in the UK, that if we come out of Europe, we're going to be less protected, because the whole of the EU have banded behind the UK in terms of asking all of the Russian diplomats to leave. Yeah,
but why wouldn't they?
Excluding
if
them.
The UK wasn't part of the EU.
And yes, so why would they if the UK was not in Europe? But also the US have done the same, actually. Although I think Donald Trump was probably looking for an excuse there as well. So there's probably another Cold War brewing in that respect. However, I did. As I said, I don't know how accurate this association is, but it is my opinion that it is by making this more new media worthy than what it is. Because let's face it, we seem to have a daily update on how healthy this the daughter is recovering, which is nice to know. But the thing is, it's becoming daily news, and the more that stays in the news, the more it's exercising propaganda, to give an example that we should actually be back in Europe, because I'm thinking something else is coming to get back into Europe that we haven't been told about. What do you think? Do you think I'll be wrong in that opinion, or?
You know what? I actually don't know, because the that be have already decided years ago what's going to happen, and all this is a smokescreen of making people think they have some kind of say in the process. So I don't know.
I don't think they could have decided years ago. I don't think anyone expected how the Brexit vote was actually going to go.
Who knows? Because it was
too close. People had to vote, not unless there was data sticks in all the machines that people were voting on. Oh no, we did it by hand. So it'd be very hard not to know what you know. Although saying that, if they were clever, they would have actually been prepared for two different scenarios.
In any case, and of course, also we don't know how rigged all the electioneering was, and the campaigning was. We don't know how rigged that was.
Are you some sort of conspiracy theorist here? Are you?
Well, of course, the whole world is.
So who's got JFK then?
Well, indeed. The whole world is conspiracy theory. It is all controlled. And the financial markets are controlled by the shadowy pools of power. It's in fact, it's
all
nothing to do
power.
with countries.
It's all power. It's all power. Yeah. Well, the thing is, financial. People with the finances actually will always control governments. That's why and that's why I'm glad that Donald Trump actually got in some ways, because he did have to succumb to the bullcrap of all the bloody lobbyists who are actually funding